In level 3, we will be applying rules of positive and negative exponents. With a negative exponent, always think of it being in the wrong place. If you have a negative exponent that's on the top of a fraction, like this first part, this is like over 1, so it's really in the top or the numerator. We move it down to the bottom of the fraction, and then we write it as a positive exponent. So this is the same as 1 over x to the positive a power. And when you have a negative exponent in the bottom of a fraction, you move it up to the top, and then it becomes a positive exponent. So I move x to the negative a up to the top and make it x to the positive a. Now I could write this over 1, but I don't need to, so that's what you get. So for example, in 5a, x to the negative 8, I move it down to the bottom and write it as 1 over x to the positive 8. Our goal is going to be to write these expressions in simplified form with all positive exponents. So for part B, y to the negative 3 needs to move up, and we get y to the positive 3. Now, same thing applies to numbers. 3 to the negative 2, since it has a negative exponent, I need to move it down to the denominator, and then I can make it a positive exponent. So this is 1 over 3 to the positive 2. And now I can do 3 squared, which is 9, and I get 1/9. So notice that a negative exponent does not make a negative number. It just moves the number down to the denominator in this case. Okay, in part D, we have a negative exponent in the bottom, so we move the term up to the top, and we get 2 to the positive 3, which is 8. And for this last example, negative 5 to the negative 2, first we're going to move it down to the denominator and make it 1 over negative 5 to the positive 2. So I just changed the exponent to positive. And now I can do negative 5 squared, which is 1 over 25. In this next example, I'm simplifying a bigger expression with a few negative, a few positive exponents. The first thing I like to do is take all my negative exponents and move them to the right place. So they're in the wrong place when they're negative. This y to the negative 3 needs to move down to the bottom, and y to the negative 10 needs to move up to the top. Everything else can stay where it is, although z to the 0, remember that anything to the 0 power equals 1. So I can basically just cross off this z to the 0 power because it equals 1, and I don't need to write times 1. So anything to the 0 power can kind of just go away. Now I'm going to rewrite this and move my parts with negative exponents. I'm going to leave negative 12x to the 5th where it is. I'm going to leave 4x to the 11th where it is. Y to the negative 3 is going to move down and become y to the positive 3. Y to the negative 10 is going to move up and become y to the positive 10. Now that I have all positive exponents, I'm going to simplify. First, I can simplify negative 12 over 4. That's negative 3 over 1. And I can just write that as negative 3. I don't need to write the 1 in the bottom. And then for my x's, I'm going to subtract my exponents. Since I have 11 on the bottom and 5 on the top, the difference is 6 x's, but the extras are going to end up in the bottom. Since there are less x's on the top and more on the bottom, those extra 6, or x to the 6th power, is going to end up in the bottom. And then I subtract my exponents for y to the 10th over y to the 3rd, and I get y to the 7th, and this time the extras end up on the top because there were more y's on the top. And that's my final answer. In this next example, I'm going to raise everything to the negative 2 power. So I get 3 to the negative 2. X to the, remember we multiply exponents when we raise a power to another power, so 4 times negative 2 is negative 8. And y to the, multiply the exponents again, negative 3 times negative 2 is positive 6. And then anything with a negative exponent needs to move. So 3 to the negative 2 and x to the negative 8, both of those need to move down to the bottom. Y to the 6th can stay where it is. So I leave y to the 6th on the top. I move 3 to the negative 2 down, and it becomes 3 to the positive 2. And I move x to the negative 8 down, and it becomes x to the positive 8th. And then I can just evaluate 3 squared is 9, so we get x to the 6th over 9x to the 8th. This last example could be done in a couple different ways. You could simplify inside first. There's a couple different things you can do, but I'm going to just raise everything inside to the negative 2 power. So everything, including the stuff in the bottom, has to be raised to the negative 2 power. So I'm going to get 3 to the negative 2, x to the, multiply the exponents, positive 8, 2 to the negative 2, and x to the negative 2. Then everything with a negative exponent has to move. So this, and this. I leave x to the 8th on the top. I take 3 to the negative 2, move it down, and it becomes 3 squared on the bottom. 2 to the negative 2 moves up and becomes 2 to the 2nd. And x to the negative 2 moves up to the top as x squared. Now, I simplify. X squared is 4, or sorry, 2 squared is 4. 3 squared is 9. And then when I multiply x to the 8th times x squared, I add the exponents and get x to the 10th.